Welcome to the Youth Work Podcast, the podcast where we dive into the heart of youth work, the passion, the challenges and the people shaping the lives of young people today. Whether you're a seasoned youth worker, a volunteer just starting out, or someone curious about the vital role youth work plays in our communities, this podcast is for you. Youth work is one of the most powerful yet overlooked elements in building healthy, resilient adults. Whether it's in the community or local authority youth clubs, scouts or guides, cadets, BBs or navigators, youth workers are there organising, listening, guiding and supporting young people through some of the most formative years of their lives. But this field, rich with stories of transformation and positive change, faces growing pressures. The tightening budgets and cuts, to recruitment challenges that leave voluntary teams stretched thin, and issues around image, safety and liability. The youth work sector is being asked to do more with less, but also with added cultural constraints. Despite the positive impact youth work has on young people's lives, it is still massively undervalued. We'll speak to paid workers and volunteers who are navigating these realities. We'll talk about the day-to-day experience of working with young people, the joys, the heartbreaks, the great stories and the unexpected moments that make it all worthwhile. We'll explore how youth work is changing, what new approaches are emerging, and what we're learning from the young people we support. We'll also tackle some of the bigger questions facing the field. Why is funding youth work such a persistent struggle? What do recruitment and training look like in a world that's constantly shifting? How do attitudes from adults and young people shape what youth work can be? And how are broader cultural and social issues like mental health, identity, technology and inequality influencing the way we engage with young people? This podcast is also a space to celebrate the resilience of youth workers, children and young people who show up week in, week out. It's a space to reflect honestly on the challenges we face, to hear from a wide range of voices and to explore practical ideas that can make youth work stronger and more effective. So whether you're on the front line or looking in from the outside, we invite you to join us in these conversations because the time adults spend with children and young people matters. And the more we talk about it, the more we can understand just how vital it is. This is the Youth Work Podcast. Let's get started. Right, okay then, well, let's get started. Ian, welcome along.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I hope everything's working for you. We're going to start off with introduction so that listeners can and viewers can know who we are. And I'm going to go first to give you a rough guide about what I'm going to say anyway. So I'm a volunteer in Scouts. I've been a volunteer in Scouts for 30 odd years, for a long time. I was a Scout as well. I've never really been away from it. And currently I lead the Scout section, but I'm also a general dog's body. So I do lots of other things for the Scout group. So I chair the meetings, I sweep the floor, do dishes, empty the dishwasher, all sorts of stuff. But we're all tripling job, and as you know, voluntary youth work is, we're all short staffed, so we're all double jobbing. So that's that. In the past, I've also worked for education and community services. I ran a youth cafe in a local town, a dry bar, so that was more direct youth work. And before that, I worked as a sessional worker for social work for the local authority as well, which was kind of a mostly doing respite, so taking, I suppose at the time there were kids that were misbehaving, but there was all sorts of ADHD flying around that was undiagnosed at the time. This is a while ago, by the way. This was like a long time ago. This was like 25 years ago. So I did that for a long time. So I have done some paid youth work, but it's been a while. Like, what proper youth work, I suppose you might want to call it, although
Go there.
Yeah. And currently, I also run a charity called Gosford Bay Outdoors, and that's concerned with the renovation of the outdoor centre, Towford it's called, or Towford if you're a local. I keep mispronouncing it, and that's down in the Scottish borders, and that gets young folk out. Well, it's supposed to. It turns out young folk don't actually want to go out to the outdoors these days, but that's my current passion project. So we've just signed a lease for that, and we get young folk out into a rural setting and get them cutting grass and doing all sorts of stuff outside. So that's me. Who wants to go next?
Go on then, you, and I'll let you go.
I'll go. Why not? Well, my lad went to beavers and cubs, and I would take him up, drop him off, like a parent does, and nobody ever asked us to help. And he came home when he was 10 and he said, "Dad, I want to go to Scouts." And I said, "Well, go to Scouts. It's not a problem." He said, "Well, they haven't got a Scout leader." And I said, "Absolutely no way." That was 30 years ago. And I've been doing this for 30 years. So 20 years as essentially 20 years as a group Scout leader, where I'll come back to that. And 10 years as a leader at Navigators. Now, the way I've done things is the group was almost run as a Soviet, where everybody was equal. And anybody who decided they were the leader, they tended to get left out on a limb. And everybody else worked together. And we still do that today. Things have changed. When we moved from Scouts, I'm not going into the whys and wherefores. When we moved from Scouts, we were finished. We'd done 20 years, we'd had enough. And the following week, 10 minutes after Scouts finished, the phone started ringing. You need to do something, the kids aren't going back. And that was how we started our Navigator group. And we thought there was a lot of talk about Scouting being youth-led. So we asked the kids, do you want a uniform? There was a unanimous vote against it. Do you want to do badges and awards? Again, a unanimous vote against. And we thought, what are we going to do? How's this going to work? So we carried on as normal, doing the same things that we did when we were in Scouts, same activities, same games, just without the paraphernalia that goes with it. And today we've got a pretty strong team. We've got 12 leaders, and we've got about 40 odd kids, and we do all right, and the kids are happy and they keep coming. So that's my experience in Scouting. For work, for my sins, I write about tyres, which you might think is very boring, but I can assure you it's not. Okay, over to you, Ian.
Right, well, Scouting and youth work type bits. I started out as a zoologist from the age of about 6. I was seriously keeping reptiles and anything else that I could find running around in the wild. I was brought up in Cyprus, which was a little bit of a nice start for somebody interested in exotic animals. Came back over to the UK, shipped around with the RAF a little bit, and then bit by bit, I should probably just cut that part and just say I got involved with Scouts because I was asked to go and do some talks about snakes for Patrol Leaders Council in one of the local districts. Shortly afterwards, I was asked to do another talk for a group of Scouts. And both lots had said, "Oh, why didn't you come along? We're always short on having people who are interested in doing different things." Because like I do, I'd open my mouth and say, "Oh, this is quite interesting." Unbeknownst to me, the first group was the Scout Association and the second group was the Baden-Powell Scouts Association. I had no idea at all that there was 2 different sets of Scouts. To me, yeah, I'd been to the Scouts twice and they'd both tried to recruit me. So I ended up with a Sea Scout troop with the Scout Association, having no sailing, canoeing, or any other nautical interest at all. Yeah, my family background's with the Royal Air Force. I got so passionately into scouting, I was going out 2, 3, 4 times a week to different groups, mainly scout section, sometimes with the Cubs. Most weekends I was either camping, hiking, here, there, all over the place. With my work, I ended up going over to the United States for 6 years and ended up as an honorary Scoutmaster with Boy Scouts of America troop in Pennsylvania. I came back into scouting in a big way still, and upset absolutely everybody because my traditional ways and some Americanisms and, getting things organized just wound everybody up. I took a group of, or a troop rather, of 6 boys and took it to 24 within a month. It was absolutely thriving, basically because we were going out, everything was on the go. I worked for myself, loads of time, loads of energy, and it just upset everybody. Well, the old folks at the time. To the point, I said, right, no politics, bye. And I disappeared off and I joined the Air Cadets. Air Cadets took me on, and before I could even turn around, I was commissioned as an officer and eventually became a squadron commander with my local squadron. In the interim, however, because just the way I am, things sort of happen around me and happen to me, and I'm not quite sure how it gets there because I'm not particularly keen on striving for things, but I also became a headquarters Air Cadet staff officer. And I was working almost full-time out of RAF College Cranwell, where I also got involved with teaching new entry officers and some senior officers communications and intelligence work. Because part of my background, as well as a zoology, I'm a psychologist, and it sort of came in quite useful on that side. So youth work, a lot of scouting, very traditional style things, lots of camping, hiking, survival type bits. Into the Air Cadets, much different organisation for its structure and how it works, but also a lot of field craft and things which I enjoyed. But gradually I moved more into the more academic sort of side of where that was heading. While all this was going on, I also started to change my work from pure zoology through to actually teaching. So I was teaching biology and then history, geography and things in boarding schools. Eventually found myself one day I was a deputy head teacher and head of boarding. And I ended up with a career as a troubleshooter going around independent schools, sorting out behaviour problems, staffing difficulties, things along that sort of line. And that was my career for about 20 years. I eventually decided to leave that because of family issues. I needed to be more at home and joined social services as part of the emergency duty team as a senior social worker. So basically when you phone Childline on 1111, they'll talk to you, then they'll patch you through to a social worker. That was me. We'd go out to everything and anything, but I was specialised in child protection, family welfare and mental health. Until I had a nervous breakdown because I was doing too much. At that point, I had to change, calm myself down a little bit, complete career change. And now I work doing circus side shows, mentalism, all kinds of weird things. The animals are still here. There's a parrot here. There's been a skunk just wandered off out of the living room. This house is just wild. We've had baby bears in the living room here, and big cats, all sorts. So I'm not your typical sort of everyday person, I suppose. I've done some youth work with kids in circus, training them up to do all kinds of different things, training them to do magic and illusion acts. I've also done some youth community work, not an awful lot of that though. I just didn't have time. So hopefully you can edit some of that out and just take a couple of salient points. But nearly all of my life, I've worked with kids in some way, shape, or form. And if it wasn't them, it's been animals.
No, that's indeed a broad spectrum of activities there, definitely, absolutely for sure. I think the thing to note is, and I think for people watching or viewing is that we're not just volunteers and scouts. There's a range of experience there, and while we may occasionally get bogged down in scouty type stuff, because scouts is big, it's a big organisation, and it's definitely important, and its reputation precedes it as well. It has a heft that the other areas of youth work maybe doesn't have, and for rightly or wrongly, and we'll discuss that. But I'm aware as well that anyone watching this will see three gentlemen of a certain age and a certain social sort of maybe status. I'm aware of that, so everything that I say is said with that in mind. So if I come across a bit middle class, and technically I'm not white, I'm actually mixed race, and I do tick other boxes, but if I do come across as a bit, I'm fully aware of it, and I'm sure you are as well. So thanks for the introductions. There's space going forward to sort of to share a little bit more of our experiences and what we do, and maybe share things that have happened as we run through this loose list of topics we've got to discuss. The first of which is, do we or should we categorise different types of youth work, or is it all the same? The reason I added that in as the first one is because, and again we're going back to scouts, when you speak to other volunteers and scouts, leaders mostly, and you accidentally call scouts youth work, some volunteers have a wee bit of a conniption about that. They go all wide-eyed, go, it's not youth work, and they think it's something else. And I don't know about you, but I can't help but feel they kind of look down their nose a little bit at youth work, or what they perceive to be youth work. And I just wondered what you thought the difference was between what Scouts does and what youth work is, or other bits of youth work, or what exactly are they looking down their nose at, and why?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why people would look down their noses or be affronted by being told that they're doing youth work, because to me, as much as I had hassles with scouting at one point, it's the most incredible organisation. And I don't care whether you're with the Scout Association, the BPSA, the British Boy Scouts, whatever, or any of the other international bits. It is an incredible thing, and it is youth work. You're helping young people basically progress, learn, move on, develop. When you get into what we in the UK class as youth work, as in a job title, then it becomes, it's like a council job. And, we're going to talk about drugs and smoking and not getting underage pregnancies and things like that, or not being involved with county lines, and it's all very prim and proper, and it's down set lines, and I think that's where most people start to make that division between what scouting is, which is a much looser and I think a much better system. than the formalised youth work that people have in mind. What actually happens in reality is probably a lot more sort of wavy and grey lines and things. But I certainly wouldn't be upset within scouting of being said that I was doing youth work. Although I would like to sort of expand and say, well, actually, I'm doing more than just trying to give, this is like as a political line or anything.
Ewan, what?
I think there is a differentiator between scouting and youth work, as people see it. But I think what we tend to see, and I've come across the same as you, Ian, people look down their nose at youth workers and, oh, it's only a youth club. But when you break it down and you look at the difference, there actually isn't that much of a difference. The kids might be a slightly different class, maybe. Mm-hmm. The challenges might be different, and you did allude to them there. The drugs, the knife crime, drugs testing, etc. These are realities for many youth workers, and most scout leaders, if they were presented with any of these challenges, they would walk away. They would not get involved. But on the other hand, there are scout leaders out there who do just that. They maybe don't make a fuss about it, but they do it. And I think in part, Scouts gets a little bit hoist by its own petard. It has this reputation of being white, middle class, and proper. I think that's the word.
I've got to just say on that is that I've worked with troops that have been in that very leafy glade. Everything's lovely, and mummy and daddy are doctors and lawyers, right the way through to.
Kind of describes me.
Oh my God! Yeah, as we go through
That's where we are.
To get into the hall, through the broken glass, past all the chavs, like hoping that we're not going to be murdered tonight. So there is that huge difference. But when you're talking about an organisation that's got tens of thousands, allegedly, of members, there is going to be that huge variance. But as we all know, it's always going to be thought of as white, middle class, whatever. No matter how many black kids and leaders that they put on the posters and all the stuff that they push forward to say that, oh, we're doing something that's, really up with the times. Tradition, it sort of sticks as an image. Like it or lump it, stuck with it. So, we just have to find a way of knowing in amongst ourselves that, there are differences. Mm-hmm.
In your current navigator group, Ewan, what kind of mix do you have, or do you have a mix at all?
We're co-ed, 50-50. Some from the council houses, some from the big hussies, as it were. There's a mix across the board. We actually did an exercise recently with our older members, sort of 15 plus, and we said, right, you work out what we're going to do in the program, and they selected a number of things they wanted to do, and I said, right, fine, go and cost it, find out where we can do this, how many people can they take. So they went off and they came back the following week with all the details, and we sat eight of us in the room, or 8 of them and me, and I got them discussing it. I said, right, what are we going to do? So we want to do go-karting, and I'm using this one because this is the best example. And oh yeah, let's go karting. Okay, how much is it? It's £49. Okay, it's £49. How much time do you get in the track? 20 minutes. Okay. Is that worth it? And they sat and they had a discussion about it, and they decided that it wasn't worth it. Not because they couldn't afford it, but because they knew that some of the others couldn't afford it. And it's all very well, we can subsidise so much, but there's a limit to what we can do. So they backed off on that. They made that decision based on the thinking of sort of everybody goes or nobody goes. That was their decision. And I think I came away from that meeting thinking that's a win, because they're actually thinking about others.
I think in terms of the question, I mean, obviously, can I just say where I am is exactly as Ian described a scout group would probably be like. If anything, the children here are probably too well looked after. They suffer from a surplus of care, I would say. I know that a lot of people think, oh, there's no such thing as a surplus of care, but one of the things I forgot to say was I just started a child psychology degree last year. I'm 1/6 of the way through it, and I've always been I don't have any official qualifications, but I've always been a big reader and a big observer, and it's always fascinated me. And I do think you can have a surplus of care. I think sometimes young people do need to be left to not neglected, but left to find their own way, and too much care robs them of agency, which I think they need to develop at a rate that suits them. I remember we were on a camp, and my van, I have a van, I've got a small van, minibus type thing. I actually bought it from my mum when my mum was alive, so it's got a wheelchair lift on the back. Anyway, it's handy for scouts, and it's 20 years old. It's an '04, and one of the kids looked at it, and obviously he knew how license plate registration plates worked and how to work out the age of cars, but he could not understand why I was driving a van or anything that was that old. It was like a brain freeze to him, and I was a wee bit confused. But then I came to understand that his family had always had new cars, so they'd always had and he's only like 10, so he only probably can remember one or two cars in his short life, and he just couldn't understand why anyone would drive a car that was 20 years old, because he had a brand new Tesla, it was brand new. So our kids are very well, our children and young people are very well looked after. I suppose going back to the question, different types of youth work. I would say that I've done the type of youth work that Ian describes, going out into streets and delivering like sexual health workshops and substance abuse workshops with young people. The nights that the youth cafe wasn't open, we would have closed workshops for young people, and they would come in, and we would have people come in and deliver workshops, and that's the kind of thing that scouts don't do. But you're absolutely right. There are leaders, there are volunteers and scouts who do that, and they do a very good job of it as well. And I dare say, although I don't imagine that it's widespread, but there are scout groups, sections that are running in areas where they do tackle things like underage sex, substance abuse, sexual health, knife crime, and all that sort of thing.
I've gone into friends troops locally, and also with explorers, and done sessions with them on mental health issues and these sort of social topics. Because it is taking place everywhere. And in the town where I live at the moment, it's very working class. It has a couple of very posh areas. We've got more millionaires in this town apparently than all the other local towns put together. Unfortunately, I'm not related to a single one of them. It's terrible. How can this happen? But the vast majority, it's poverty. and I mean real poverty. You go into some parts of the town and there are kids who have never been to the beach. Now, this is a seaside town. We are on the coast, but there are kids in this town that have never seen the sea. Yeah, and it's like, how can this actually happen? But it does sort of feed back, partly because of the fact that poverty's there, and the parents have got other restrictions on their lives which stop that happening. But it's also down to parents being very protective, and it doesn't matter whether they're from a middle class or upper privileged class or whatever, or working class. Parents are very protective of their children, and whether they're helicoptering them from one activity to another, or they just want them in the house where they know they're going to be safe and they're not going to be attacked by other people and things. And it narrows these poor kids' lives down so much that they don't get the opportunities to go out and learn for themselves, actually practically doing things. And that's what scouting and the best of youth work's all about. It's expanding personal development and getting things on the go. And unfortunately, we're in a society now where right across the board, whether it's from health and safety type people at one side, or overprotective parents, or the tabloid newspapers, even the BBC's at it at times, right? Everybody thinks, oh, we're all under attack. We can't do these things. And we desperately need leaders to gather up these kids and just take them out and actually do the things for them.